Street Fighter 4!
Oh man, so much to say about this game. I think we have a lot to thank for Street Fighter 4 in general. In my opinion, a large place of fighting games, a large place of where they're at today, and a large place of them growing to the point where audience attendance and the size of the FGC is as we're at now, is largely thanks to Street Fighter 4. Kind of revitalized the industry. If anything, there were other fighting games happening. Tekken was still happening, Guilty Gear, you know, Blaze Blue, a variety of other titles. But Street Fighter 4, what it did to the industry was kind of make everybody wake up that, oh no, we can still make fighting games, have them be marketable, and have there be actual profit behind it. That's good, right? That's one thing I can absolutely attest, that Street Fighter 4 was kind of the shock to the chest of this entire industry, that we can keep doing this and we can keep making stuff, because even around this time frame beforehand, like SNK was going through some huge financial problems and Capcom was going through financial issues, and I can tell you personally that I don't think there was a more hyped fighting game in my entire life. Even before 2009's release date on console, there was a lot of arcades that had Street Fighter 4 boards, and yeah, I went to every single one multiple times a week and tried my best to get as much experience with the game as possible, because I wanted to get good and nothing was going to stop me. So I spent a lot of gas money traveling to play Street Fighter 4 at Super Arcade and Arcade Infinity and Family Fun. But even at that time, I was, believe it or not, making videos. I was actually getting match footage and putting them up on my YouTube channel with some really low quality stuff. But that was kind of the near beginning of my YouTube channel. It had been around, but yeah, Street Fighter 4 I can thank for sort of being one of the big pioneering reasons why I even started making a lot of videos in general. Let's talk a bit about the game itself. It comes out and it's relatively amazing. People love it. It's a revitalization of Street Fighter. It takes visuals and gameplay and does a 2.5D style that allows you to still have the precision of 2D hitboxes, but 3D characters. Something that is a lot different than the other 3D ventures that Street Fighter had gone through with the Street Fighter like EX series. Street Fighter 4 was trying to change that, and they were like, we're gonna properly figure this out, and they do, and it feels really good. It feels like snappy and it makes sense, and nothing has really played like this before. I joined a whole bunch of tournaments, right? I spend a lot of time playing this game. There's people playing it crazy like pre-release. It comes out and it is awesome. Gameplay wise, we all know the focus attack, right? We all know that FADC, all these kind of things sort of permeate the game and is generally pretty fun. And a lot of characters in the game are pretty decent at the start, but it's clear that there's a lot of domination from characters like Sagat. And I believe even by default, Ryu was really good in vanilla Street Fighter 4. So it is really exciting, man. So another pioneering part of SF4 that you got to give it credit for is online. And the online of SF4 at the time was great. I have a historic video archived on my channel of me quite literally premiering some of the netcode for Street Fighter 4 on a pre-release version of the game.
So yeah, that was online. I didn't see much lag, and it's a whole Pacific Ocean separating us, so yeah, Street Fighter 4 is bitchin' netcode.
Yeah, it was good, man. All things considered, we just had some online matches with people in vanilla SF4 on like the Xbox One, and it ran okay. Like even at 4 to 5 bars, it was pretty decent. Well, there we have it. That was shockingly not terrible, right? 4 to 5 bars, shockingly not terrible. The delay-based netcode in this is not terrible, but it's also not good, and it's very bare bones. But in the era of 2008 to 2009, nothing worked this good. The nicest part about it is that SF4 is a game that gives everyone a chance to grow a community. And I don't ever remember the term FGC or fighting game community existing before Street Fighter 4. There were just a bunch of dudes that hung out on SRK. But SF4 brought in so many new people that it was insane. There was just a metric buttload of people that want to play SF4, and it feels like it is the hottest thing in the world. It is like the most played fighting game ever, next to like SF2, and it truly brings everybody together. And that's what I think resonates the most with me with like vanilla SF4, is that it brought together this congregation of people at the arcade, at the usual meeting places, that you'd really get to know, and you'd get better at the game, and everyone had a deep aspiration to level up. And yeah, the game is fully featured, has a pretty damn big roster at the start. It's got like 24 plus characters, I think maybe 25. It's got arcade modes that have like cutscenes per character. It's got a decent arcade mode per character. So it is a fairly decent well-packaged game that isn't just an arcade port. It does have a lot. It's kind of the new standard for what fighting games would be from this point forward. We would be playing Street Fighter 4 for years and years and years after that. So Super Street Fighter 4 comes out a bit after, like within a couple years, I believe. Super Street Fighter 4 does some pretty minor refinements of the gameplay. I remember being really excited about Super SF4, and the new characters are great. You get like Guy and Cody, and you know, a bunch of new roster members eventually. But I remember really hoping that they were going to change things up, because at some point I loved SF4 vanilla and I really enjoyed the game, and then at some point it did get a bit stale, and it was like, yeah, the game is kind of solidified in terms of what it is and how it is. And I was hoping that that was going to change. I actually wanted that to change. And it didn't really. We got some new interesting mechanics. I even have some videos going over some of the crazy stuff that Ken can do in the new version, because Ken was my main. It is pretty much the same game with some minor refinements. I think the game gets a little bit faster. So as much as I wanted to love Super Street Fighter 4, I played it a bit and I made some content, but I didn't dedicate myself nearly as much to the game. So we have to fast forward a little bit more. There's a funny amount of drama that happens with later versions of Street Fighter 4, specifically Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. The arcade version of Street Fighter 4 would get updates for this, and arcade owners would actually get these updates for Arcade Edition later down the line that would bring the game and its roster to a larger roster scale and have new and crazy characters in it. And before Capcom even had the chance to announce this stuff, there were characters like Evil Ryu and Oni that were in the game that we didn't even know about. And suddenly you go to the arcade and people are playing as them. So somehow there were time-locked characters around a coordinated marketed release for Street Fighter 4 that were going to get people excited about the arcade version of the game, but people were taking videos, handheld videos of the arcade screen and showing people back at home, look what the hell happened. We're actually playing these crazy characters. They were in here the whole time. What's going on? There was a lot of confusion around that time frame because of that, because soon after there would be trailers for Arcade Edition, and you see that like Oni and Evil Ryu, these crazy Shoto characters, were actually in the game. I thought it was a hoax. I thought it was fake. I know a lot of other YouTubers around the time frame that were at the arcades to grab footage of these characters and take it home, and they get striked by Capcom, and there's a whole bunch of drama. Soon after, we officially find out that, okay, Arcade Edition is here, and it has these new characters, right? And there's going to be an update, and all this stuff is going to be an update to Super Street Fighter 4. And I can tell you that, at least to me personally, Street Fighter 4 gets really, really interesting when these nutty-ass characters get added, because Oni and Evil Ryu are respectively crazy. They are really wild characters to the Shoto drama that is SF4. And when you start looking at the roster of the game, yeah, Street Fighter 4 is a very Shoto heavy game. It really much is the, you know, Mortal Kombat 9 situation where we just have every Mortal Kombat ninja practically in here. It was like that with SF4. We're going to give you every single Shoto character and even more. But there wouldn't be any big changes to like the home console version until, I believe, 2012. I'm trying to remember this correctly. We would see the likes of returning characters in the form of Yoon and Yang. I'm pretty sure Yoon, Yang, Oni, and Evil Ryu were the big showcase characters for this era of Street Fighter 4. Was it 2011? 2011 was Arcade Edition, and then we got the version update 20 Arcade Edition like 2012. All these characters come online, and they're insanely good. They're crazy good. And at this point, I had fallen off the Street Fighter 4 hype train quite a bit, even though I did find some of the characters pretty fun. But the game was getting very much dominated by twins, by dive kicks and stuff of the like. It's hard to even like imagine that they could make a character that is possibly as OP as Yoon in Street Fighter 3. But the ways that Yoon was really good in the old games is completely different than the way that he's really good now. It's not as oppressive, I think, but my God, man, the character was all over the place. It's really hard to say if this era is one of the prime eras of Street Fighter 4. I do remember a lot of people giving a lot of credit to the Super Street Fighter 4 era. Super SF4, I think, is where most people competitively think is probably one of the better spots where the game was. But I think a lot of people have good feelings about Arcade Edition 2012. But I can't say the same for Ultra Street Fighter 4, the final version of Street Fighter 4. which is easily one of the most feature-rich fighting games that Capcom has put out. So Capcom takes a note directly from Hyper Street Fighter 2, which lets you select characters in any fashion from Street Fighter 2 and have them fight each other. So that means you could take any version of SF2 Ryu and fight Super Turbo Ryu. They do the exact same thing for Ultra Street Fighter 4, and I love it, man. There is technically so much content in this game, it's insane, because you can take Vanilla Sagat, the most OP-ass bitch, against any other character, and you could fight the modern versions of characters versus the older versions. So it meant that you can get 4 or 5 characters for every single character in the game. Not only that, it introduces a bunch of brand new characters that Street Fighter 4 had not had, but funny enough, Street Fighter Cross Tekken did. We'd see the likes of Rolento, we'd see the likes of Poison, we'd see the likes of Hugo, and we would get a brand new character in the form of DeCapre. At the time, was kind of surprising, but I do remember being a pretty big letdown. A lot of us were pretty excited about who this final Street Fighter character could be for Street Fighter 4. And even I remember making a reaction video at the time, and it was kind of like, oh, it's just Cammy, but not. Ultra Street Fighter 4 is an interesting game because it actually does shake things up mechanically. Quite a bit different than the previous ones. It adds a mechanic called Red Focus, which is a 3-bar costing focus attack that allows you to directly cancel into it and instantly stun the opponent, so that if you wanted to combo into your Ultra, or depending on whatever character you had, I think the game gets pretty interesting with Red Focus. Yeah, I kind of like it. To me, these gameplay changes were kind of the big sort of system-wide adjustments that I was looking for. I really enjoy Ultra Street Fighter 4. I find myself playing it more than any other version before it, going back to vanilla. I still look at Ultra Street Fighter 4 as being one of my personal favorites of the Street Fighter 4 series. I actually genuinely enjoy it because of Red Focus, because of the tunement of characters, how how Evil Ryu feels, how everything just sort of feels right. It feels like we got to this point and this is the way it should be. But that cannot be said the same for the game competitively, because Ultra Street Fighter 4, while it would be ushering in the end of Street Fighter 4, was almost forcing it because of some ridiculous balance things that were happening. I remember the game being tormented by Rolento and obviously dominated by another character by the name of Elena. And Elena has this healing ability, this healing super that lets her heal. She's got hit confirms for days. Her buttons are amazing. Her specials are amazing. She just has everything, dude. Because people are playing this game for money, right? The character's just everywhere. Everybody has to have a pocket Elena of some kind. I go back and I look at Street Fighter 4 footage now, and I almost don't mind it. But whenever I go back and look at Ultra Street Fighter 4 or SF4 in general, all I can kind of remember is like, dude, I felt like I watched this game being played for a decade, just waiting for like a different game or a new Street Fighter or something, you know? The end of Street Fighter 4's competitive life isn't absolutely amazing, and most people that I think play Street Fighter 4 competitively nowadays completely understand that Elena is kind of a drag, and they will play other characters. That's not the end of Ultra Street Fighter 4. A lot of people forget, and we didn't get to put much time into it, but Ultra Street Fighter 4 introduced a new and experimental feature called Omega Mode, which shockingly completely rebalanced and readjusts every single character in the roster to just be weird and crazy. Ken can like kick fireballs and stuff. I only got to mess with it so much to a certain degree because it was just a lot. After so many years of putting into regular SF4 and all the different versions and just trying to play it, playing these weird altered versions was just so bizarre to me. For every character was dramatically different in Omega Mode, and the presumption amongst fans and competitors alike is that this is a testing ground for Street Fighter V, a sort of way that they are going to make Street Fighter V work. And while a lot of the crazy nuances that characters would get in Omega Mode didn't directly carry over to SF5, there is one thing that absolutely does, and it is the way combos work. Comboing in Omega Mode was significantly easier than base Street Fighter 4. And this ends up being one of the most critical things that we hear about SF4 over the entirety of its lifespan, because a lot of people are now exposed to competitive Street Fighter. A lot of audience that had no clue that competitive Street Fighter really existed is now a thing, and Evos are things, and major tournaments are things, and people are watching these tournaments. So there's a big audience here, and a lot of people are trying to get into it, and a huge amount of that audience cannot get into it for a specific reason, because all these pros, all these people at high level are doing what is called one-frame links. And one-frame links have been in almost every Capcom game before this. They are permeated throughout the entire Street Fighter series, but they are just ridiculously difficult combos. So sick. Here we go. Doink, doink, doink. Bink, 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 bink. Bink, bink, bink. Bink, bink, bink. Bink, bink. They set a stigma on Street Fighter 4 that so many people dislike the game because of the executional barrier. Because if I want to do these cool combos, I need to do one-frame links. The reality of the situation is that you're not bad at SF4 if you can't do one-frame links. There's probably several other things that you can improve upon that don't require that execution. People see competitors and everybody doing these ridiculously cool combos and want to try to do them, and as soon as they give them a shot, they realize how incredibly difficult they are. And yeah, they are incredibly difficult. I just went back and tried to do some Evil Ryu combos that are notoriously hard and couldn't finish the really hard one. Had to do an abridged one, and then we get to see how insane some of these combos are, because yeah, they have like 5 or 6 one-frame links in them. Some people just don't realize how difficult that is, but it is really difficult. Funny enough, some tech is discovered. People discovered this plinking technique, which makes you press one button of the button you want and one button below it. So it's like powered down. If you want to get a medium plink, you do medium punch to light punch. All this really does, once you get good at it, is allow you to make one-frame links, two-frame links, which is a lot easier. Granted, plinking is not a thing that everybody can do easily. You still have to practice the shit out of it. And I remember plinking every single button on my arcade stick religiously when I was playing Street Fighter 4. It almost made me do it to a certain degree. But this eases up the executional requirements of the game quite a bit to allow for people to do it. Long story short, the lesson learned from Street Fighter 4, at the end of all things, is one-frame links bad, people are pissed off. So it would be a thing directly addressed in Omega Mode. And Omega Mode would kind of make everything, from what I understand, a two-frame link. It would be no more crazy one-frame link combos. And this is the end of Street Fighter 4, where the crazy, insane executional era of Street Fighter kind of comes to an end, because Street Fighter 4 was a very execution-heavy game because of all this. That brings us to technically the modern-day pre-Street Fighter 6, where, yeah, a lot of these elements would be taken away. And the lesson that Capcom would learn from Street Fighter 4 is that they heard the complaints. They heard the complaints that people did not like all this crazy complexity, and people wanted the ability to do all these cool combos. And that is the message delivered, and Street Fighter 5 answered. But possibly not in the way that we were all hoping.